it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel. And you probably already can tell I'm doing a filming saga today because I am in a Tasmanian Devil shirt. That's Christmas themed. Anyways, today's video, as you probably can tell by the title, is the exact reasoning and a little bit of a backstory as to why I switched from the Omnipod Dash and traded myself in for a Tandem t:slim X2 pump. Now, mind you, I was on multiple daily injections for 2 months, kind of in that transition period, and I was very apprehensive to go back to another pump. And I'll kind of explain my little story with Omnipod Dash for those of you that don't really know my story fully or are just joining my channel. So I was diagnosed in July of 2018 and then May of 2019, so nearly, a year, that's 10 months on injections, I decided to go to an insulin pump, and I thought I was ready, and my endocrinologist thought I was ready, and I looked at different options. I actually played with a Tandem pump, an Omnipod pump, Medtronic pump. And I thought it was kind of sketchy that every single time, like, I placed an order, oh, you're going to get the dash, you're going to get the arrows, you're going to get the dash, you're going to get the arrows. I ended up, my insurance covered the dash at the time. At the time, it was either the Omnipod Dash or Medtronic were your two choices for a pump. And I wanted something tubeless, and, looking at everything, I tried a demo pod. Everything was fine and dandy when I first started the Omnipod Dash. Like, it actually worked pretty good. And then probably starting the following year, like at the beginning of 2020, is when I really started to notice a lot of problems. So first off, one of the major problems that I had was the PDMs. I've had 5 PDM replacements in less than a year, and these are 3 of them that I have here. And they actually had a software problem back in March. It wasn't considered a recall from when I spoke to an Omnipod representative, but it was basically a software issue. But in my opinion, if it's not delivering you adequate insulin, like, that's huge. Like, that should be a recall, because, like, if it's giving somebody else too much insulin and causing them lows, and in my situation, I wasn't hardly getting any insulin and I was getting so many high blood sugars, like, that's a huge problem. So, I had these multiple replacements because of PDM errors. I guess for that. Multiple PDM errors, issues with the battery, etc. So, like, say I'd go to charge my PDM. Never had this problem with Tandem. You go to charge this PDM, and it would fully charge, like, get it to 100%, fantastic. I would say within, like, maybe an hour or 2 of charging it, or maybe the charge would last maybe a day, I would get down to, like, all of a sudden drop from, like, 80% to 15% in, like, 10 minutes, and it would tell me, hey, your thing's gonna die. Of course, when you need it the most to do a bolus or a correction, it would be dead. So I'm thinking there's truly something wrong if I keep having charging problems with all these pumps. And even the very last pump replacement I had was starting to give me problems too. Like, there's something buggy in the software. I don't know if something happened since COVID, but significantly since March of 2020, when COVID-19 was declared a worldwide pandemic, I've had some issues with PDMs not working, one thing, and then all of a sudden it was my pods. I'd put them on my body, and anytime I'd pull them off, they would be back leaking insulin, blood everywhere. Pods would scream, and then I've had like 2 pods fail on me. Once in the middle of summer when I was finishing my clinic level 2 stuff, and then one actually failed on me in my clinic level 3, like right before I jumped back into multiple daily injections, and I couldn't deal with the anxiety of thinking like every other pod's gonna fail. Like, I was having far too many problems to constitute to continue with it. And like, they're a fantastic company, and I think this pump works for certain people, especially young kids, but it certainly doesn't work for me. And it was really, really challenging for me too to deal with it with dentistry, because like, if like my blood sugar's super high, like I couldn't like correct anything, or wouldn't autocorrect, like the Tandem autocorrects for me, which is super nice. And I think that was a huge part of my problem, why my A1C really, and I was fighting it, like, at the end, like, in the summer, my A1C was, like, 6.4, 6.5. It was continually going up, and my endocrinologist had this stuff documented for quite some time with all the problems I had been having. And then from June to October, my A1C went from a 6.4 to a 7.5. And mind you, an A1C really is a reflection of your 3-month average, but the very last month before you have that A1C taken is the most potent on that actual number. It literally reflects the number the most. So if you imagine my blood sugar numbers in like that late August to September time frame, right before I had my A1C taken, were absolutely terrible. I started multiple daily injections at the end of September. So unfortunately, those last couple of weeks that I was on multiple daily injections couldn't really impact my A1C all that much. I was able to thankfully stabilize my blood sugars and not have them go wild, and then I was slowly starting to drop my numbers. Not as significant of a drop as Tandem has made, which is absolutely fantastic. But that was like the breaking point. My A1C was 7%. I said, this is not getting any better. This is only getting worse. So then I called them. Actually, I had my mother call the office because my schooling at the time, which I'll hope to explain in my video, for my third semester dental hygiene school, it was nuts. Like, we were going 4 days a week straight, and I was actually at the campus 5 days a week, even with COVID, because on the day we didn't have clinic, like, you're preparing, or like, heaven forbid, somebody came down with COVID, you got to find a backup patient, you got to do this, you got to do that, right? I didn't know when I would be able to personally contact my endocrinologist. My mom wanted to speak directly to her, and I would have too. And, you know, my mom said, this girl's having far too many problems with her pump. Hi, kitty, kitty. This girl is having far too many issues with her pump. She has been asking to go back on injections. Could you get her some Humalog pens? And she wants to switch to Levemir and not Lantus. At the time, she was thinking I was on Levemir before, like, when I was doing just shots, like at the very beginning of like my diabetes journey, but that wasn't the case. So anyways, I got those prescribed, and then I stayed on multiple daily injections till November 23rd. When I went to see my endocrinologist in October, I was basically, you know, really pushed to put trust in Tandem, and I was death scared. Like, there was like, I absolutely had no intents on ever returning to an insulin pump after this experience. And like I said, I'm not dissing Omnipod. They have great customer service. I think this pump is great for kids, you know, and I think maybe part of it was the way that the sites were inserting into my body. Maybe the 45-degree angle was not for me. Now, you probably already seen my video on 30 versus 90, and I do well with a 30-degree site, but maybe a 45 wasn't working for me too. So I think it was a combination of maybe just me as a body, but it definitely, the major aspect was just the poor luck I was having with all the technological problems. I was also overhearing a lot of people that are on Arrows talking to their endocrinologist. Actually, one of them is a diabetic. Her son is a type 1 diabetic and has been diabetic for years. I'll link her channel below. I think it's Dreamflight 6000. But she was kind of talking about how, like, his endocrinologist basically said, don't go for the dash right away. Wait till the Horizon. Now, maybe if I would have waited it out a little longer and gotten the Horizon system, where it was kind of like Omnipod's version of a closed loop system, where it would hook up with, you know, Dexcom or a continuous glucose monitor to kind of adjust your insulin for you, maybe it would be all fine and dandy. But I had my share of problems. So I was speaking with my endocrinologist, you know, like, I got a message saying, you know, your A1C has gone up significantly. Let's talk about ways to improve it. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, yeah, I understand I'm stressed. And, you know, I went through a little bit of a burnout where, like, you know, I was giving myself injections while I was on the pump, and I was like, what's the point of having an insulin pump when I'm giving myself injections for meals? And probably, for the most part, giving myself injections for basal insulin, because if I was back leaking that much insulin, I was just feeding myself basal insulin to keep my blood sugar at like 200, 250 all the time, and not, you know, get myself into the hospital and DKA, if that makes sense. So I talked with the medical assistant there. I talked with, you know, my endocrinologist, and they're like, you really need to try Tandem. Like, put your faith in it and just see what happens. And I'm just, you know, death terrified. What if this fails? What if this does this? What if this problem happens? Like, I'm broken. I'm completely heartbroken from an insulin pump. Like, I get it. It's a mechanical thing, and there's going to be problems. But when I'm continuously having more, hello, kitty. I know you want to say hi. This is Tinkerbell. Hello. When you're continuously having so many problems to where, like, a pump isn't doing you any more justice than shots, I had to switch. So they basically kind of said, oh, you really should think about it, you know, and considering your deductible is, you know, basically met, why don't you go for it? Like, that's the most ideal time to buy a pump because it's going to be mostly covered. And at the time when I bought the Dash, the Tandem pump, like I said, wasn't covered. So I really didn't have it as an option unless I wanted to pay super out of pocket. And at the time, I really wasn't thinking it was for me. Fortunately, UMR, United Healthcare, recently, I believe in July or August, don't quote me on the exact month, shortly before I went on it, maybe a few months before, approved Tandem as one of their pumps. Like, you can choose that as a pump. Now, again, I want to talk more in the future about how it's absolutely saddens me that insurance companies pick and choose what companies, can be available to them. Thankfully, I have the option between Medtronic, Tandem, and Omnipod at this point. I could not do the Aeros. It was only the Dash, though. So, again, insurance companies like to limit your choices a little bit. But I placed an order. I think I saw my endocrinologist like mid-October, and I want to say at the end of October, beginning November, my mom and I had talked about it, and it was resonating in my head, like, this whole Control IQ thing she was talking about. I'm like, what is this? Like, oh, this pump isn't, whatever. It was like resonating, and then I hear more and more of you saying how much you absolutely love Tandem. Now, again, a cure would be the cure all end all, but like, I'm really dry in the throat. But, I wanted something that was going to make my life better. Honestly, I would be satisfied on shots, but then the more and more I thought about it, and I was actually keeping one of my teachers up to date, the more and more I thought about it, the less and less shots were appealing to me, because I'm thinking about, like, my future. As a dental hygienist, maybe as a mother, I sure hope to want to have kids, sometime in the future. Like, I'm 22 and don't have anybody that I'm dating right now, but, like, I want to have kids sometime, maybe in my mid to late 20s, but depending on when I'm married, depending on when life happens, but I want to have that future. And, I'm thinking about my future, and I'm thinking, is shots and, basically being a micromanager on shots like I was. You guys saw that in like a 2-month time, I filled up a gigantic bottle full of needles and syringes and pen needles. Am I going to be able to micromanage diabetes that well with injections, with leading a busy go-go lifestyle as a hygienist and maybe and as a mother? In my hopes, I want to be a mother. I started thinking about that, and it wasn't, it was becoming less and less likely that shots were going to be my thing. Now, if I was at home like I am now, just living at home, no job, no nothing, no stresses, no X, Y, and Z, or whatever, I can manage well on shots. Like, that's not a problem. But I'm thinking about convenience and on-the-go lifestyle. Like, am I really going to be able to continue with injections? And the hard answer was no. And at that point, my mom and I talked about it, and we just, like, sat and looked at things, and I made the jump to switch to Tandem. And I got my supplies rather quickly after I called Byron back. That is the DME company that I use. They sent me this stuff, and my trainer contacted me actually the day I actually got my pump supplies, which was kind of funny, because she's like, oh, your stuff should have shipped and it should be on its way. I'm like, I got it. It was just kind of funny. And then, like, the following week I went on the pump, and I've been on it since. And I've been on this pump for, it'll be 2 months coming up here. And I love it, and I'm so glad I switched. Now, are there days where my blood sugars go out of whack because the site might be bad, or like me, I'm doing a thigh site right now with an AutoSoft 90, and it's sing-songy because I'm experimenting? Absolutely. But for the most part, my average blood sugar has dropped probably 30 milligrams per deciliter, which, coming from me is huge, because I had jacked my A1C up to basically a combination of factors jacked my A1C up that high. I'm sure the stress from school didn't help, but I definitely knew it wasn't the main concern, and here's why. When I was on injections, I remember having a day in clinic where I was, like, tired, super stressed, whatever. I don't even remember what I was doing that day. My blood sugar never budged past, like, 140 or 150 at my highest, and I'm sitting there thinking, normally, if you think about, like, high stress, you think it would jack my blood sugar to 250, 300, right? Well, not on shots it did, but on the Omnipod it did. So it led me to believe that I was truly deficit in insulin from this pump, from either leaking, not appropriately communicating and giving me what I deserve in basal and definitely in bolus. So that is a huge reason why I switched off this pump, was just I was deficit in insulin for sure. And my next A1C, I'm going to get in, like, I think it's mid-February, because I usually go to my endocrinologist like every 4 months, except in this circumstance I'm going almost like 2.5 months-ish, because I started on this new pump, and then from January to, I probably see her back again in May, but I have all my lab work to be done in February again, because everything was kilter from October to February now, and now, like, I started this pump, everything's going to be kiltered January to May kind of thing. So, I'll get my new A1C in probably February sometime, which is, I try to get them, like I said, every 4 months, and I wasn't going to take one right now. Would it be improved? Probably, but not super improved. And it does take time to bring those highs down, you guys. And I could totally see, like, if my blood sugars were constantly running high, if I was eating whole cakes and not taking insulin. Like, that's not my case. It came to a point where I was pretty burnt out and I was, like, giving up. And, you know, like, I was giving myself insulin, but I wasn't, you know, thinking about, like, you know, what's the cause of the problem and just running with it and just dealing with this, basically. And it came to the point where, like, 200-300, just let them sit there. Like, let my sugar sit there. Like, who cares, right? No, you got to make that choice and you got to change things. I'm so thankful my A1C only went to 7.5. So in essence, it's truly slightly elevated. It's not like dangerously high. Like when I was first diagnosed, I was at a 12.7. And since being diagnosed, I've had my A1C has been at like 6.5 and less for 2.5 years. And this is the first time it has been above 7 in like 2.5 years. So we went through a bump in the road with this, but I learned my lesson that you really got to find what works for you. And the Tandem has been nothing but a blessing to me in my life, especially with Control IQ. Like, I don't have the fear anymore of lows. I don't really fear super bad highs anymore. I don't fear the thing going to scream at me and tell me it failed. Now, can this pump fail? Absolutely, this pump can fail. Can sites get bendy? Sure, I've dealt with that a couple times. But the problems that I've had, the minimal problems, like maybe a few, I could count on my hand the amount of times I've had problems with this pump. And it's probably been like 3 times. In comparison to what the benefits I'm getting, it's so much greater. And unfortunately, the cons of this pump were far outweighing the benefits I could have received. Like I said, I'm not dissing Omnipod Dash. I think for certain people it's working fine. Or maybe now that since that I've stopped using it in September, maybe that their product has gotten better and they've figured out some of their technological problems or whatever it was, manufacturing, I don't know. But since COVID broke out, it's been awful. And like I said, it was basically I was fighting my own body at that point because I was wearing these pumps but giving myself injections, and I'm thinking, why don't I just go back to injections? And then it's like, okay, I was able to get stability with my blood sugars. At least they weren't, at least my average blood sugar wasn't continuously going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. It was, you know, stabilizing. And now I've dropped 30 milligrams per deciliter in about a month and a week here. So my A1C will probably be at 7 or a little below it by my next one. Hopefully maybe even in the mid 6s again, because it had jacked up 1.1%. Let's see if I can get it back down to that level at least. And then I can fine tune some things and maybe make it go down into the low 6s, upper 5s like it was again. And that mainly is just for my sake, because I want to be that healthy person. But it's also like for me, like I said, I get the mindset of like, what if I want to have kids? Like I don't have that limitation that way of having like a elevated A1C. Like right now, I would be scared to have a kid. I'm not obviously trying to have kids, but like I would be scared to have a kid at a 7.5 A1C. Like, you know, because my blood sugars are roller coastering that much, and you know I'm hitting 200s and definitely 300s, a hell of a lot more than normal. Like, that's dangerous for a kid or a baby growing inside of you. So I'm just like, nope, we're not going to do that right now. But that's kind of my story of why I switched. Kind of a long-winded story, but basically it boiled down to I wasn't getting insulin. And like I said, I had lost like 8 to 10 pounds. It was very hard to tell this to some of my teachers because like I wanted to pretend that there wasn't a problem. I didn't want to tell people I was having problems. And most days I went to school feeling like garbage. Like I was like a zombie. I felt like a complete zombie. Like nothing I was doing was helping. And you know, anybody, if they asked me if I was okay, I would just say, yeah, I'm fine. I didn't want anybody to get involved. I didn't really want them to know all the problems I was having. And then I had one day where I broke down in tears after I finished 2 patients. They're like partial, I think it was a partial denture evaluation with 1 patient, and then I did like a set of x-rays for that clinic day, like 2 little things that knocked off my list of requirements, right? And I broke down in tears, and I like showed my teacher my blood sugar. It was like 318, and she's like, holy crap. And I'm like, I've been having more problems than you want to know about, and you know, like I don't even want to talk about it. And I said, and it takes a lot for me to break down into tears. I've never ever once cried in front of a teacher there to break down in tears. That was absolutely heart-wrenching for me to do that in front of somebody. And I basically said, I don't really like to ask for help. I'm just not that person. Like, I guess if I was low or something maybe, but like I basically hid everything because I didn't want people to think like, oh, start worrying about me and stuff. It's like, you know, I'm just not that kind of person, like I said, to openly admit some of this stuff. So this is hard for me to talk about too, like kind of what I went through, but like, I told them I was going back to shots, and it was like a week later I went back on shots. And that I was pretty sure I wasn't going to switch to an insulin pump again. And then I gave them one of them the update, like, hey, I am going to go to a pump. Like, I'm going to try it. And then I saw this teacher before I finished for the, you know, like the semester, because we had one lab class that went through like, was it early December? Dental materials, I think. Yes. And it was, you know, I told her at that point it was working a lot better. And, you know, I had to put faith in a pump again. Like, I was certain I would never ever touch an insulin pump again just because of the problems I had. And I took a leap of faith, and the leap of faith has gotten me nothing but good things so far. So I guess my story is really to share like why I went through what I did, why I switched, and, you know, if you're having problems, like look at the other side of things and see what's happening. And like I said, I was so deprived of insulin. It was like I was literally every day my eyes were dry, mouth was dry, and A1C went super high. Like I said, I lost 8 to 10 pounds because I was probably burning more ketones than what I thought I was testing for. I mean, at some points I would have no ketones, and I'd have small, then they'd be gone. So it's like I was probably burning more ketones than normal, dehydration. I also wasn't eating. Like, I had no motivation to sit and eat because, like, what's the point of even eating something so low carb? Like, even if it, you know, like maybe 5 carbs, and it would shoot my blood sugar so high. Well, it's because I wasn't getting basal insulin. If you're not getting basal insulin to begin with, you're basically taking that injection for your basal insulin, and then you're basically eating food uncovered for all the time. So it was getting to the point of, like, you know, I was eating for food uncovered and just like not realizing I was doing that until you know, several months later. And it's not like I gave up on this pump quickly, and I'm not giving up on Tandem quickly either, even with the few issues I've had with it. Like, you can't give up. And I gave this a year and a half, and because things weren't getting any better, I switched. I've been on this thing for like almost 2 months, and it's been nothing but really great things. So it's kind of like I said, weighing your options and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I sure hope that if you have insurance or whatever your coverage is, that you're able to get the materials that you need to best manage your diabetes, because everybody's management's different. I'm not saying switch from the Dash to Tandem if you're doing that. You know, this is not this video is about. This video is not to diss Omnipod. This video is not to support 100% Tandem and that, you know, Omnipod and Medtronic suck. That is not the case. It just wasn't the pump for me. And everybody's, like I said, everybody's journey is different from what they switch to for pumps to what they do for, you know, insulin types, what they use for a meter, whatever. Everybody's diabetes journey is different, and this is mine, and I hope it kind of sheds some light as to kind of what happened with everything. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Feel free to hit that subscribe button. I post as often as I can about diabetes plus more. And until next time for another video, take care, God bless, be kind, spread positivity, and be thankful. Bye, everyone.